Well, it's been a week of hectic diplomatic developments in San Francisco. A defining visual came this week of US President Joe Biden meeting his Chinese counterpart in what comes as a big breakthrough in the tensions between the two global powers, even though the meet has thrown up issues that continue to be insurmountable. Well, is there more to this beyond the optics? How should India be looking at it? We'll unpack all those aspects for you on the show. Meanwhile, India finds itself in the thick of things, at the center of this global flux. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's crucial visit to the US comes at a hugely opportune time for India, as New Delhi looks to expand its footprint as a key player in the global supply chain. In the war zone, meanwhile, the UN has said that Gaza is on the verge of immediate starvation as the Israeli offensive continues. So let's get started. Well, India's big semiconductor push in the US. Piyush Goyal's US visit this week was much more than a diplomatic presence in the APEC, which is a 21-nation economic grouping that has so far given the cold shoulder to India. He had a rather packed schedule. He met the who's who of the world of business in the US, top CEOs, business leaders, and even visited the rather coveted Tesla plant in California, which had, well, even Elon Musk react. But there was an underlying message to this entire visit, that India is currently in what everybody is calling the India decade. And when it comes to global supply chains and the semiconductor ecosystem, India is the place to be. Take a look at this report. A handshake of innovation. A strategic visit to electric vehicle giant Tesla's plant in California, and several meetings with America's top CEOs later. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's crucial US tour on the sidelines of the 21-nation economic grouping APEC that excludes India marks a turning point in New Delhi's emergence as a key stakeholder in global supply chains. In what is being called a technology partnership for the future, India and the US are stepping up cooperation in the semiconductor ecosystem to an all-time high. And India's big semiconductor push was a highlight of Goyal's meeting with the CEO of Micron, the US-based tech company looking to set up India's first chip facility in Gujarat that could create nearly 20,000 jobs in the years to come. A deal that was inked during the Prime Minister's high-stakes visit to the US this year. Talking India up to tech firms in the US, Goyal met executives from big tech startups, venture capitalists and business leaders in a bid to expand India's global innovation footprint.
India today provides an opportunity like never before, and no country in the world would be able to develop their economies without the involvement of India in their supply chains for resilience, for competitiveness, and for trust.
And the culmination of his 4-day US tour, the Industry Roundtable in San Francisco, led by the minister, where India and the US signed an agreement to promote innovation through cooperation among big startups and focus on investment without regulatory hurdles. Parallel to Goyal, Dr. Jaishankar was in the UK. In a freewheeling interaction in London, he addressed India's ties with Taiwan, another key partner in the semiconductor push.
Taiwan has a reputation when it comes to electronics and, of course, more recently with semiconductors. So there has been an upswing in the levels of cooperation.
As PM Modi said, even sky is not the limit in India-US cooperation, especially when it comes to made-in-India chips. But the big question, can this strategic partnership grow fast enough to lead India to a vantage point in the global economy amid shifting power dynamics? Vedant Agarwal for NDTV. And a big newsmaker on India Global this week. Well, Piyush Goyal himself speaks to NDTV's Sonia Singh, and he says what is actually the India story and why India is truly the place to be at this time. Take a look.
You've said that the India-US relationship has nothing to do with what many say is the China plus one strategy of the United States.
I'm very convinced that today India stands on its own feet. India is a compelling case for investment. It's a compelling partnership based on trust, which we are forging with different countries. And while we are now very actively engaged with IPEF, we haven't applied our mind to joining up with APEC at the present moment. But clearly the respect that India is getting from the United States of America, from their leaders, from the other countries around the world, reflects the growing importance of India as a country and the huge adulation, I can say, that I see amongst the leaders when they talk about Prime Minister Modi. Across the world, there is a recognition that there should be more resilient supply chains. Across the world, businesses are concerned about their experiences of the recent past. They are also very concerned about transparency, about opaque business practices, about and the big value that democracy brings to the table. In all those respects, and when you have an overlay of the cost of doing business, where India today stands out as a very, very attractive destination, I think India will be an important partner in supply chains, more for the trust that they have in our abilities. Just before this interview, I had a conversation with a large semiconductor company who has big operations in India, and he told me that they're almost like an Indian company now. They have 15,000 highly qualified, highly paid engineers working in India doing cutting edge technology work, R&D work, innovation, design, and they're super excited about it. They have aggressive plans to grow the business there.
So for American companies, it's made in India because so many of the engineers are from India. But you visited the Tesla factory, and I think you made that point that you were excited to see that the number of components they import from India is going to double. You were excited to see the number of Indian engineers there. But the big question, Bloomberg just reported that India is considering perhaps a tax holiday or tax cuts on fully assembled electric vehicles to come in for the first 5 years. Any confirmation of that?
Please don't buy the stories that you see on news channels.
That's
or
why I'm
news
asking
media
you
all the time. My visit was primarily around meeting the Tesla team, many of whom are Indians and have done us proud. It was also to discuss their plans about an increasing India element in their supply chain, and I'm really immensely pleased at their plans to double their imports from India, and going forward they're really looking at very aggressive plans along with reputed auto component manufacturers in India. And I do think that in the years ahead the EV ecosystem in India is going to grow rapidly. Probably the fastest ramp up you'll see in the next 10 years of electric vehicles will happen in India.
So you're not willing to go down that road of tax cuts. You're not thinking of that yet because you think our market is big enough.
I think we'll talk to all the players and have a conversation with other electric vehicle manufacturers both in India and across the world, and come up with a cogent policy which will support the electric vehicle ecosystem.
One interesting aspect has been because so often geopolitics takes matters really out of any country's planning. So we've seen that with the ban on the export of rice because of what happened in Ukraine. Now you've got what's happening in Israel and Palestine. How worried are you about looking, because of India's plan to become the third largest economy in a few years, how do you think these global conflicts are actually impacting India? And again, we talk about the voice of the global south, but India has differed quite significantly on the view on the conflict from many other countries of the global south.
Today I met many large investors running some of the world's largest investment funds. And their investment plans are huge into the country. I in fact threw a couple of numbers at one or two of those companies, and every case they said, no, this is not our ambition, it's much bigger. So I think India is poised to get there to the third largest economy and then beyond. On your other point about the geopolitical situation, first of all, let me clarify, any of our bans are not because we are unable to meet the needs of others. It's just to ensure that the greed of some unscrupulous business persons or traders does not cause international prices to go crazily high. So in effect, our bans are more to keep prices both in India and in other less developed countries or emerging markets stable. We do provide rice or other food grains to all our friendly countries, to all our deserving partners, particularly the less developed countries, which is at affordable prices and helps them maintain price stability. I think we have great clarity in our thinking. Prime Minister Modi is on record to condemn terrorism in all its form anywhere in the world, and India has suffered from terrorism for years. We have been at the receiving end. I mean, almost until we removed Article 370 and 35A from the statute in Kashmir, we would have terrorism rearing its head on a daily basis. It's only in the last 4.5 years that we've finally found peace in Kashmir, except for that sporadic incident. Having said that, I think we believe in the two-nation theory. We believe there should be a cessation of hostilities. We have supported the last UN resolution. And India has had a very consistent stand, A, against terrorism, B, against peaceful coexistence. Dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward. War can never be a solution.
Mr. Goyal, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So dialogue and diplomacy is the way forward. But amid India's economic push in the US, President Biden met China's Xi Jinping in the first meeting between the two leaders after a long deadlock. Well, diplomatic ties, remember, between China and the US have been at an all-time low after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. In fact, the two global powers agreed to increased cooperation, but the diplomatic efforts went down the drain after President Biden called Xi a dictator, revealing the fundamental differences between the two countries. But the optics, the body language, the caution with which the two sides approached each other tell a lot. Here's a report. From not being on talking terms military to military, naval fleets moving in the Taiwan Straits, to candid one-on-one conversations. The optics of the much-anticipated Xi-Biden meet in California were mixed. When the two leaders sat down for talks, Xi Jinping hailed the promising future of China-US bilateral ties.
找到两个大国正确相处之道。
It is an objective fact that China and the United States are different in history, culture, social system and development path. However, as long as we respect each other, coexist in peace and pursue win-win cooperation, we will be fully capable of rising above differences and find the right way for the two major countries to get along with each other. I firmly believe in a promising future of the bilateral relationship.
But President Biden was more stern in his messaging. This as the United States of America heads into presidential polls in 2024.
We haven't always agreed, which was not a surprise to anyone, but our meetings have always been candid, straightforward, and useful. I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly, leader to leader, with no misconceptions or miscommunication. We have to ensure that competition does not veer into conflict. And we also have to manage it responsibly, that competition. That's what the United States wants and what we intend to do. I also believe it's what the world wants for both of us, candid exchange.
In terms of outcomes, from resumption of military to military communication to cooperating on the fentanyl issue and intergovernmental discussions on AI regulations, some headway was made. But outside the idyllic ambience of Woodside, where the two leaders met, their tone was ominously different.
Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is the guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
China never bets against the United States, never interferes with its internal affairs. China has no intention to challenge or replace the United States. Instead, We are glad to see a confident, open and prosperous United States. Likewise, the United States should not bet against China or interfere in China's internal affairs. It should instead welcome a peaceful, stable and prosperous China.
While fundamental differences were acknowledged, some even half-heartedly addressed, the jury is still out on whether President Biden has tamed the dragon, averting a second Cold War. With Shrishti Shankar, Bureau Report, NDTV. So, well, that is a big question, but the Israel-Hamas war continues to be our big focus. It has entered its 6th week and the devastation in Gaza continues. Civilian deaths continue unchecked. The death toll is in thousands. But let's not forget, these are not just numbers. Little children, women, entire generations have been wiped away. Those left in the blockaded enclave are starving for food and struggling to live. Absolutely heart-rending scenes there in Gaza. Now, India is watching the war very closely, and while many say that global diplomacy has failed as the war rages on, PM Modi, while addressing the Voice of the Global South Summit, said that dialogue is the only way forward. Listen in.
हम सभी देख रहे हैं कि पश्चिम एशिया क्षेत्र की घटनाओं से नई चुनौतियां उभर रही हैं। भारत ने 7 अक्टूबर को इजराइल में हुए जघन्य आतंकी हमले की निंदा की है। हमने रिस्ट्रेंट के साथ ही डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी पर भी जोर दिया है। इजराइल और हमास के कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में सिविलियंस की मौत की हम कठोर निंदा करते हैं। राष्ट्रपति महमूद अब्बास जी से बात कर हमने फिलिस्तीन के लोगों के लिए मानवीय सहायता भी भेजी है। ये समय है जब ग्लोबल साउथ के देश ग्रेटर ग्लोबल गुड के लिए एक स्वर में बात करें।
So, well, the big question, is the world doing enough for innocent civilians? But moving now in classic Jaishankar style, the External Affairs Minister minced no words while gunning for Justin Trudeau on the Hardeep Singh Nijjar issue, which remains to be one of India's most, the biggest flashpoints perhaps with Canada. Now, Jaishankar reiterated India's stand. This as Trudeau seemed to be on the back foot. Take a look.
Indian government indirect or direct involvement with the killing of that Sikh?
In this case?
Yes.
No. If at any stage any country believes that they have reasons to suspect something like this, in fairness, they should present us with a reason.
Right. Okay.
So I would not justify it. I would look into it. There's this whole issue.
Jaishankar pulling no punches in his pointed attack on Canada in the United Kingdom. Months after Canada's allegations claiming India's involvement in Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing, New Delhi's stand remains firm. Extremism is unacceptable to India.
Canadian politics has given space to violent and extreme political opinions which advocate separatism from India, including through violent means. And these people have been accommodated in Canadian politics. They are given the freedom to articulate their views.
Gunning for Trudeau, Jaishankar made it clear that Canada cannot get away with the allegations without putting out evidence in the public domain. During a conversation with a journalist at an event in London, Jaishankar said Niger's credentials as a terrorist are for everyone to see.
He has a track record which is there in the social media, and that track record is a pretty graphic one.
Jaishankar's strong remarks come days after Trudeau's big climb down on his position vis-à-vis India. Even as Trudeau finds himself cornered in a controversy he triggered himself, he reiterated his allegations against New Delhi.
Every step of the way, we have tried to work constructively and positively with India, and we will continue to. And that means continuing to work with Indian government diplomats. This is not a fight we want to be having right now.
3 months on, the diplomatic deadlock between New Delhi and Ottawa continues, with no sign of reconciliation. Vedant Agarwal for NDTV.
Looking at the world and
So well, that stalemate continues, but moving now to the story of Nimisha Priya, an Indian nurse who has been sentenced to death in Yemen after she was convicted of killing her Yemeni sponsor and former business partner. Now, this comes as a big blow to her family, which has been fighting the case in Yemen. My colleague Sneha Koshi spoke to Nimisha Priya's mother's lawyer. Listen in.
35-year-old Indian nurse in Yemen, Nimisha Priya's death sentence has been upheld by the Supreme Judicial Council in Yemen, country's highest court of appeal. Nimisha has been convicted of murdering her sponsor. However, her petitions have claimed that she was physically, financially tortured and her passport was wrongfully confiscated by her sponsor. She tried to retrieve her passport by giving him a sedative, is what she has claimed in her petition, which emerged to be an overdose. There is a forum comprising of politicians, businessmen, activists, diaspora leaders, mostly from Kerala, that are seeking justice for 39-year-old Nimisha Priya, that has now also filed a petition for Nimisha's mother to travel in a Delhi court to travel to Yemen. Now, the court has asked Centre to look into the plea. I'm being joined right now by Mr. Subhash Chandran. He is Nimisha Priya's mother's lawyer. He's the one who has petitioned for this case in Delhi court. But not just that, he's also part of the forum which is fighting for justice for Nimisha Priya. Thank you very much, Mr. Subhash, for joining us.
Hi, good evening.
Mr. Subhash, first question. You filed the case of Nimisha's mother in the court. The court has asked the centre to look into the petition. What is the petition and why has the mother filed this petition? Please explain.
Yes, Neha, this is the second writ petition filed by Nimisha's mother, and first petition was filed by the same Nimisha Priya International Action Council, and the court has given a order on 15th of March 2022. In the first petition which we filed before Delhi High Court, Honorable Delhi High Court, we sought the permission from the government of India to travel to Yemen. Actually, there is a travel ban since 2016 to Yemen. The Indian citizens cannot visit Yemen without the permission of Indian government. So that's why now we have only one option to save Nimisha's life, that is the blood money negotiation with the victim's family. And in this scenario, when the travel ban is there, we are unable to reach out to the victim's family for the blood money negotiation, which is defeating the human rights of Ms. Nimisha Priya.
Right. Let me just take a second and interrupt you to explain to our viewers what is blood money. Blood money is basically the compensation that would be decided by the victim's family as a compensation for the crime that was conducted. So in this particular case, Mr. Subhash, what are the circumstances where the mother is right now? What kind of a background does she come in? Does she have the financial ability to go ahead and file cases?
No, actually, she belongs to a very poor family. Nimisha is from a very poor background, and she was working as a healthcare worker, nurse in Yemen. And in 2016, this unfortunate incident had happened. In 2017, in fact, in 2017, this unfortunate incident had happened. Actually, she was working there for a quite long time, and in 2016, the internal conflict has started in there. And her husband, Nimisha's husband, and the 1-year-old child traveled to India, and she was alone there. And thereafter, the victim, her sponsors started abusing her, torturing her physically, financially, and all these things.
So, well, India says it's providing consular assistance as well. But it's the season of the World Cup, and quintessential cricket diplomacy never goes out of style. As the men in blue take on Australia in the big finale, the Australian Prime Minister has been invited to watch the much-awaited clash in the cricket pitch between the two close allies. And well, speaking of close allies, US Ambassador Eric Garcetti was bowled over by the legends of the '83 World Cup team in a friendly match. He said, "Let's bring the trophy once again home." And well, it's not just cricket. Music has now become an inseparable part of diplomacy too. And when it comes to Indian music, few can resist. Here's the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore trying his hand at the sitar.
Hi everyone, I'm here with Mr. Karthik today, and he's going to teach me how to play the sitar.
So a bit more the history of the sitar is it is a derivative of two other instruments. One is the Rudra Veena, and the other one, or they call it the bean, and another one is the sehetar. So sehetar, I think, is a Persian instrument. So sehetar means 3 strings.
Right.
Just these 3 notes, Ni, Sa, Ri, and the chikari. We call this the chikari. Right leg below, left leg over.
Okay.
And then this is the god of the sitar where the sound comes up from.
Okay.
And that's got to rest on your feet. If it can't, it's just outside your feet is also okay.
Okay.
So your elbows.
Okay, this might be better. It's quite fun. Yeah. Thank you once again, Karthik, for teaching me how to play the sitar. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, DPM, for having me come over.